Welcome to the Authentic Change Podcast. I'm Mike Horne, your host, and this podcast is for leaders and coaches who need and want fresh perspectives on what it means to live and to lead authentically. You're a leader who wants to make a difference, but sometimes you feel stuck. You know there's more to life and to leadership than what you're currently experiencing. It can be tough to figure out how to grow as a leader. You might be reading all the blogs and books, but it still feels like you're not making progress. You might even be feeling like you're doing everything wrong. On Authentic Change with Mike Horne, we interview experts who share their insights on how to live and lead authentically. Our guests are trendsetters in building great leaders, teams, and organizations. We provide fresh perspectives on what it means to live with purpose and authenticity. Welcome to this episode of the Authentic Change Podcast. Hi, and welcome to this episode of Authentic Change with Mike Horne. I am your host, Mike Horne, and I am delighted that you're joining me on what will be a short episode of Authentic Change with Mike Horne. I am absolutely delighted that you have tuned in, and I hope that you find the content here to be so valuable that you'll rate our podcast and that you will forward information to your friends and colleagues regarding the podcast. I am very excited that we are in the wind down phases of Authentic Change with Mike Horne, and I'm very much looking forward to launching our new podcast, The People Dividend. And while we'll cover many of the same topics, we'll take a new emphasis on executive coaching, organization development, and the tasks and activities and the methods and processes that enable all of us to bring our best to every organization. Today, I want to reflect again on integrity. And in some ways, it's a celebration, a reminder of a book I published about 2 years ago on the topic of working and living authentically with integrity and its relevance to leadership. Today, we're going to dive into the heart of organizations. And in the heart of organizations, I propose that two things exist. One is dialogue and one is integrity. And in the high-functioning organization or in the high-functioning leader, both of those elements are present. There is the element of integrity and there is the element of dialogue. So I'm going to frame this conversation in a few ways. I'm going to introduce a model of why dialogic integrity is essential to effective organization development, and effective leadership development. And first, I want to start with an acknowledgement. And that is the acknowledgement that many conversations in organizations can feel more like debate rather than dialogue. We spend a lot of time involved in discussion as well. But as we uncover what it means to be in dialogue with each other, it takes us to the concept of being genuine, which is something I think that gets a lot of play in Integrity by Design, working and living authentically. Because as we define integrity, for many, it's the real deal. It is that point of being genuine. So when we talk about dialogue, we are talking about a way of integrity, a way of being. When we have dialogue, there's mutual respect for thoughts and emotions. And many of you know that can be quite rare in organizational settings. And I think it's also true when it comes to the topic of leadership. Without integrity, you really can't lead. And without leading, you can't expect people to follow you. So when we take integrity as a leadership topic, not only an organizational topic, but we extend it to the topic of leadership, it's really heartbreaking for me to see how many missed opportunities there are because people refuse or don't engage in dialogue. So the first question I'll pose to you is, what if we could frame dialogic encounters differently? And there's a great chapter in the book on, it's not a chapter, but a great section in the book on dialogic integrity, which I would encourage you to dig into. Again, you can purchase Integrity by Design, Working and Living Authentically on Amazon. And you can use this podcast as a way of deepening and furthering your ideas about dialogic integrity. So I'd like you to begin by picturing a matrix. And on the horizontal end of that matrix, we have three categories: bosses, subordinates, and external parties. Bosses, those people who report to you, and everyone else from outside. And on the vertical axis, there are two rows. One is a rational encounter, and the other is emotional encounters. When we're thinking with our head, when we're thinking with our heart. That might be a simplification. So we've got three columns: bosses, people who report to you, subordinates, and external people, and two rows: a row of emotional encounters and a row of rational encounters. So when we have a rational encounter, what we do is we find that rational encounters are often very formal exchanges. And when we have a formal exchange with someone, whether it's a boss, a subordinate, or an external party, when there is a breach in integrity, often those are formally reported in an organization system. There might be a code of ethics that governs. There might be a whistleblower hotline. So when we are in these rational encounters and we're considering integrity, there's a tendency to appeal to logic and judgment, to follow a linear path, to exercise good judgment. But sometimes I'm going to suggest, when we're dealing with external parties, people who are outside of our organization, outside of our sphere of influence, we might overlook certain actions that they take because we're focused on an outcome. We're focused more on finalizing details. But if things go south, if things don't work out, we may find often that we're ready to make some threats, threaten punishments, or offer incentives for people to keep the project, the effort, the ambition moving forward. When we go to that second row and we think about emotional side of dialogue and integrity, the reactions tend to be more spontaneous. They're more personal. Emotions come to the fore in interactions when we're thinking about our bosses or our coworkers. However, when we're dealing with external parties, we might try and suppress some of our emotions because we don't want to avoid offending potential clients or stakeholders. So these emotional, more spontaneous, more personal reactions really are in the forefront of what we have in our boss relationships and our coworker relationships. So rational or emotional responses reveal a lot about an individual or an organization's integrity. How are you responding? Are you responding authentically? Are you responding in a genuine manner? And we have to remember that we're all human here. Sometimes people ask me, is it okay to tell a lie? And I sort of laugh. I said, why are you asking me that? Go to your rabbi, go to your confessor, go to your priest or priestess, go to your higher power. What I do know is that when bosses, coworkers lie to each other, it diminishes trust. And without trust, you really can't make progress in authentic leadership. If I don't trust you, I won't think you have integrity. If I don't think you have integrity, I won't trust you. It's really a vicious cycle. So we want to understand, what is it that our emotional responses are revealing about our individual integrity or our organizational integrity. So we expect out of our leaders, and we should expect from ourselves, to understand that our responses, rational or emotional, offer us lessons in how we bring more of who we are to what we do.
We also interpret responses to integrity issues by the medium or the channel they come through. Do you think less of this person? Do you think less of that organization? Do you think less of this client or more of this client? Let me give you a couple of examples. We've probably all heard phrases in corporate speak or organizational speak that John or Mary or Fred, you take whatever name you want to have, is leaving to pursue other opportunities. We know that's probably not true. Or if somebody begins a conversation, well, to be perfectly honest, for me, I always wonder, well, what's behind that statement? These kinds of phrases in corporate speak often mask the real issues that are at hand. Look, sometimes they need to occur, particularly in separations from companies, personnel separations, people separations from companies. You want to protect a person. So you really want to understand intent as best you can. But in the absence of understanding intent, we do focus on behaviors. And, what is consistent? What is your experience in your organization or in the exercise of your leadership relative to what are you covering up? What are you revealing? What are you sharing? So language has a lot to do with our dialogue, our dialogic encounters with others. Let's face it, a lot of corporations of any size really have ethics codes. And you'd think that the code would result in more dialogue on important issues, but often that's not the case. Because for many of us, the real test of character, the real test of integrity isn't just passed off to a corporate ethics code. So it's not to say that they're not worthy and they're not important. When we think about external stakeholders, when we think about rationality in organizations, it's important to have this corporate ethics code. But I still want to push and say, well, what do we do to make dialogic encounters better? I think it starts with being brave. It starts up for standing up for what you believe is right without considering the costs, and to be sincere about it. And if you act out of that sincerity and bravery when having a dialogue on integrity, I think in the long term, you're remembered with love and with gratitude, as opposed to some of these more negative images or consequences we have around whistleblowing, telling on someone. You come at it from a place of love and gratitude. Love will rule in these cases. And think about your own workplace. What situations bring integrity to mind? In your work with leaders and with others, what are the situations that bring integrity to mind? I know it might go to the expense report, but I'd like to encourage you to think more personally on that emotional side. How do you bring up integrity in conversations? Well, you won't get very far if you say, well, you're a liar, or you're a moron, or you're an idiot. So thinking about how we bring up integrity in conversations, giving consideration, I think builds the capacity we have for dialogic encounters in integrity. You might ask yourself, how does your interaction with your boss reflect on your integrity? Positive, negative, neutrally? But in your everyday leadership actions, you are setting the stage for a culture of integrity. And your coworkers, your leaders, your bosses have some responsibility for that culture, and how they show up helps to define the possibility for dialogic encounters in integrity. So there are plenty of opportunities that we have to discuss integrity, to think about the congruency of our thoughts, words, and actions, and to honor the principles of integrity. So my recommendation is let's seize those opportunities to bring more of who we are to what we do, to speak up, to think about dialogue, and to create cultures where people effectively listen as well, because at the end of the day, the ability to listen can have a profound impact on the behaviors that we take. And that's what people will see. So once again, I'd love to thank you for listening to Authentic Change with Mike Horne. Again, I'm so excited about the prospects that are ahead of us with the People Dividend. I appreciate you hanging in there, perhaps just for a few more weeks as we get ready to launch what will be our spectacular new podcast, I'm certain. And let me just leave you with a couple of thoughts as we consider integrity and integrity by design. And again, encouraging you once again to pick up a copy of this book. If you're unable to do that, let me know. Be in touch with me at mike@mike-horne.com. And I'm happy to be in conversation with you about this or any other topic that affects how we bring more of who we are to what we do. So here are the two thoughts to leave you with. Stay brave, stay sincere. And if I'd add a third one, it would be stay tuned for more on leadership and integrity and many of the topics that we'll continue to explore in the People Dividend. So once again, to be in touch with me, please visit me at mike-horne.com on the internet, on the web, and reach out to me by writing to me at mike@mike-horne.com. I'm so looking forward to you continuing to listen to our episodes, to your recommendations for the podcast, and for suggesting it to your colleagues and friends, and for your likes on wherever you listen. So stay brave, stay sincere, stay tuned. Again, thank you for listening to this episode of Authentic Change with Mike Horne.
Thank you for listening to the Authentic Change podcast. I'm delighted that you've tuned in to listen. Please visit the show notes for links to topics discussed in today's podcast. To download a free ebook on authentic change and leadership and to subscribe to my newsletter, please visit mike-horne.com. Once again, mike-horne.com, mike-horne.com. Once again, thank you for listening to the Authentic Change podcast.